What would you do if Guns N' Roses invited you on the road and you had 30 seconds to decide? Dean Clark said yes. That's one decision that took him from an ordinary life into the world of rock stars, chaos, reinvention, and creativity. But this isn't just a story about music, it's about saying yes to unknown, taking risks, and how the strangest moments can shape your entire future. Dean went on to become founder of a global creative agency. His life has been anything but linear, and in this conversation, we will unpack the moments that made him, the chaos he's embraced, and the lessons he has learned. This is going to be a weird and wonderful story of Dean Clark. Let's start at the beginning, Dean. Where did you grow up, and what kind of kid were you?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for asking. So Dean Clark, and I live in Los Angeles. I've lived here my entire life, which is unusual. In LA, everybody is from somewhere else. So I'm that rare LA unicorn where I'm actually from here. But I was born 3 months early to a poor Hispanic mother and mystery Jewish father. So when I found out I was Jewish and Mexican, I found out I was the chosen Juan, and it's a bad joke, right? But and so, but so this gal gets pregnant, right, out of wedlock. We think by her Jewish boss, which seemed to be her method later on in life. And so she wants to get rid of the evidence, right? So she signs all this paperwork to get rid of the evidence of her indiscretion, right? And her compromised state. And so instead, though, her plans are foiled when I come 3 months early in her apartment. And so when I came 3 months earlier, I was born in an apartment in this poor part of Los Angeles. So the paramedics came. They said, look, no 2.5 pound baby survives 59 years ago. So they just said, hey, move on with your life. The baby's probably not going to live. And so I was whisked away an hour away to another hospital, to a hospital very far from her. And so I was raised by doctors and nurses. And so I was put 6 months in an incubator and then a total of 13 months in the hospital. And one of the key parts that made me unadoptable was I had a tumor in my windpipe. So right here, if you feel between that little U between your collarbones, that is where they put a hole for a tracheotomy. And so I had a trach, this tube in my throat to help me breathe for 6 years.
Wow.
And so baby parents don't want to take a baby with a tube in their throat, right? Like
Yeah.
it's not a safe place. And then when I cried, all the air came out the tube, this hole right here, and none past my vocal cords. So I was the baby that didn't make any sound when they cried. And
Oh.
so supposedly I just rattled the bars of my crib in the hospital until the nurses came. And so I'm very
And what
fortunate to be here.
impact? Yeah, what
I'm
impact do you think had on, like, because we can talk about the other aspects of your life and your experiences that you've had, but for you, do you think that, like, not being with your mother, not being with doctors
Yeah.
and nurses for 13 months, for over a year, how do you think that sort of impacted you as a person further down your
Yeah.
life?
Well, I'll get to that part of the story in a minute, but yeah, I ended up self-medicating and getting on drugs at a very early age. So I don't know if some of the trauma of the early life um, factored into some of the bad decisions I made later on. But so the miracle of my story was this family wanted to become foster parents. Okay, they didn't want a special needs kid, but it just so happens I call it divine appointment. So a divine appointment is when God shows up and everything changes. And so my very first miracle, and I've had thousands of divine appointments. The very first one was the Clarks were being interviewed to become foster parents, and when the social worker was checking out their house, right, to see if it's appropriate, She looks in the backyard and there's a special needs kid in the yard. And she says, "You didn't tell me you work with special needs kids." And she goes, "What do you mean?" She's like, "Who's the kid in the yard?" And she goes, "Oh, that's just the neighbor."
Oh.
So I really believe God put that kid in that yard at that precise second, because he wasn't in my house every day, right?
Mm.
So that it was at that precise second that God set the trajectory of my life. And so the Clarks did a month of medical training to deal with cleaning out the neck of a child with this tube, right? They had to get medical training and they had no idea. They got no medical background. Dad was a barber and mom was a homemaker. And so they got a month of training and they put this machine called an aspirator in the home. And so, and then they brought in a mute baby. So if you have children or anybody listening has
Oh,
kids, can
oh,
you imagine your kid
no.
crying and you can't hear them? So you don't know they're in distress.
Yeah.
And this is the age of before baby monitors and all the things, the technology that we have now that might help you deal with that situation. So anyway, so the Clarks are the heroes, real heroes of my story. And Mom Clark and Dad Clark are still alive. They're in their 80s. And my sister built a little house for them. So she lives on the property of my sister and she's their caretaker. And they're still just amazing people and really the heroes of my story along with God. And so they brought me into their home and miraculously, once I was around normal kids, I became a medical miracle. And they were able to take the trach out
Wow.
and I could walk and talk and I even figured out how to pull air past this tube in my throat where I would, and I would say something. And I had this strange method of talking to force enough air past my vocal cords so I could communicate. And so, and then here's the real part that's made my story kind of go viral. So my story's been all over the world. It's on one of the largest websites in the world called allaboutgod.net or .com. And so this is the one fact that blows everybody's mind. I was the first of 10 kids that the Clarks rescued. 10. And many of them had special needs. So um, they're just saints, right? Like they're just
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
special
Yeah.
people that
Yeah.
are rarities in this world where they've given their life away. And to this day, really, they're just all about other people.
Yeah.
And in a world of takers and selfish people, they're standalone. And so uh, miraculously, the Clarks, she also had 3 kids of her own. I have 2 brothers and a sister, and then she raised the 4 neighbor kids. Right, so they were always over, and then she still had gas in the tank and babysat on top of that. So can you imagine this house just full of people,
Yeah.
toys and chaos and but good chaos, right?
Yeah.
It was an
Yeah.
idyllic childhood. And so they raised me until 9, and I really did have a very blessed childhood. But at 9, they want to adopt me and give me my forever family. Because the other foster kids that they worked with, they had families. I
Mm.
was the rare foster kid that didn't have a family,
Mm.
right? So most people had, their parents would come and visit them, and family members would visit them, but not me. I had no visitation that I know of. And so at 9, the mentally unstable gal that gave me up at birth found me at 9 and rips me away from the Clarks. So tragically, I lose my stability, my family. I move in with strangers. I'm left to be babysat by a drug addict older brother who's 6 years ahead of me age wise. And so tragically, it got it got very chaotic from there.
This is
And
where it gets a little
all
bit
of,
weird, doesn't it?
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I don't. If you want me to keep going, if you have any
Yeah,
questions,
no, absolutely. So
it-
you get pulled away from the Clarks,
correct,
and you're back with your mother.
correct.
So
And
where do we go from here?
yeah, so it's another part of LA. So I never really lived in super fancy parts of Los Angeles. That came later. So I come from the barrio, right? The Hispanic, uh, you know, tough streets, right? And I've always lived in kind of either lower middle class or poor areas where there's drugs and gangs, and so all the areas I lived in up to this point were not particularly great. And so now I'm living in chaos, and so I immediately fall in with the wrong crowd. And not only
What age were
does
you? What age were you at this stage?
so 11 so at
11.
11 years old, I ended up getting on drugs, tragically. And so tried drugs very early. I'm always surrounded by much older kids that were not making great choices. And so it
Mm.
was really fun to get the little kid high or whatever. And so I started on pot, but eventually moved on to harder drugs. And at 13, I ended up dealing drugs in school and getting caught. And it wasn't even real drugs. It was like fake caffeine pills, but they were pills, right? Which is a pretty
Right.
serious thing.
Yeah.
And I was selling them as real drugs. So
Right.
it turns out that that's a felony. Who knew that if you take a fake drug and you sell it as a real drug, it's still a felony? And I'm like, they didn't give me a free pass, right? So immediately I'm arrested, thrown out of school, and put on a bus and sent to another city. And in LA, they affectionately call that passing the trash. And I
Okay.
was the trash.
Where did
So
you get sent to?
one school district sending a bad kid to another school district is passing the trash on to there's
Right.
somebody
Right.
else's problem.
Yeah.
And what was your question? I'm sorry.
No. So where were you taken to? You said you went to another district, so another part of
Yeah,
LA. You were taken to.
yeah. So I'm on this one street, and for anybody listening that's in Southern California, there's these 4 cities that are all connected on one street. So Sunland, Tahunga, La Crescenta, La Cañada. And it keeps getting richer as you go up that hill, and until it gets really, really wealthy, like $10 million houses. And Flint Ridge and Bradbury, it gets really very wealthy. So it's funny. It starts at the very bottom of the hill where it's
Right.
poor, and then
And
it
you
just
move
gets a
along
little
there.
better as you go up. And so crazily, I'm in the poor neighborhood. I'm at the very bottom of the hill, and they put me on a bus, public transport bus, and they ship me to the rich part of town.
Mm.
So luckily, in my case, and probably only my case, they passed the trash upstream to the wealthy part of town.
Right.
And so again, I don't know. I'm always going to different schools. I'm always in chaos, right? So I had 2 elementary schools, 2 middle schools, 2 senior high schools, and then 2 colleges. So I was
Right.
always moving, always trying to meet new friends. Well, when you're a preemie, right? So I've always looked really young and been shorter than most folks. And so when you in high school, that's not great, right? So in middle school, you're always like the guy that somebody wants to
Yeah.
punch. So I would find the tough kids, the druggy kids, the bad kids, and I would get in with them as both protection and belonging, right?
Yeah.
And not that I was prey. I was always had a good mouth on me, so I could talk my way out of most jams, and I make people laugh. And I think the gift of gab came to me early, very early. And so I ended up at this new school, and the guy that I meet, I kid you not, his family is the New York Mafia.
Are you tired of chasing clients and feeling like the only way to grow is to work harder and harder? Imagine instead having a steady stream of qualified clients coming to you because they know exactly who you are and why they need your help. That's what Christine Campbell Rapin is all about. Christine is the founder of Clear Acceleration Inc. and the creator of Turn on Your Waterfall movement. She works with entrepreneurs and business owners to cut through the noise, sharpen their messaging, and build simple systems that consistently attract clients without burnout and without gimmicks. If you want to discover how to stop chasing and start attracting, Christine has built resources and training designed exactly for you. Her work is trusted by business owners who are serious about creating consistent growth without the overwhelm. So here's what to do next. Go to the description below and click on the link and sign up. Take that first step today and start building consistent growth in your business with Christine
Yeah.
Campbell.
So I go from the amateur leagues to the big leagues. Okay. So I immediately fall in with this family, and his sister is running a drug dealing and theft ring using middle school kids, my best friend and me, and high school students as well. So she had all these bad kids surrounding her. And of course, she has her own place, right? Like, we're like, yes, this is great. We have this place where we could go and party and hang out with this corrupt adult. And in her and she was beloved by her family. So this was a person that really was, you know, adored by her family. But the whole family is kind of involved in criminal activity. So
Yeah.
their idea of the sweetheart downstairs is a little different than some other people. And so we kids would eat dinner. And then the crazy part is the next year I move in with that family. So my mom let me move in with the mafia people.
So
So for my entire
what was your mum doing at this point? Like, obviously, she wasn't
she's going
caring
from
or
one
looking after you, but what
right.
was she doing?
She never looked after me, not for 1 minute. So basically, she takes care of kids the way she takes care of dogs. Throw them in the yard and hope for the best, right? So
Right.
I was not raised at all. Um, I mean, and kind of the opposite. She would take me to bars while she's hanging out and meeting with her friends. And so I'm this little kid with a camera hanging out at nightclubs, sitting at the piano bar where this everybody's getting drunk and trying to hook up with their next, thing. And so I'm in literal singles bars hanging out. And then we would go and we would get exotic beers. And so I'd be drinking alcohol with my mom at like sixth grade. So she really didn't have a concept. She wanted a buddy, and
Yeah.
since I spoke like an adult,
Right.
she treated me like one.
Right.
When I needed parenting and when I needed, you know, slapping around, right? She never could really provide that. And
Okay.
so
So you
she just
then
went,
moved in with the mafia.
yeah. So now I'm living with the mafia family, and these are New York mobsters out of Buffalo, New York.
Right.
And I'm not sure exactly which of the five crime families they were with, but if you have questions, you can text me, or email me. But so I'm living with the Battaglia. I call it the Battaglia crime family out of Buffalo, and so it's John, and he's the stepdad, and he's straight out of The Sopranos. He's like, and so immediately I get my own mafia nickname, right? Because if you're cool, the
Yeah.
nickname they always nickname everybody. So
Right.
I was Dizzy. So it's like, come
Okay.
over here, Dizzy. Forget about it. Forget about, like, and so there was actually a famous baseball player named Dizzy Dean in American baseball history. So that's probably where the name came from. So Dizzy Dean, plus I was stoned all the time. So I really was a little dizzy. And so, but crazily, I've always been a good student. And so I've always been like teacher's pet in many instances. So teachers love me because I spoke well. I'm a smart student, but I live this double life. So I've always lived this double life where, not now, but where I was kind of beloved by a lot of adults because I spoke their language, right? And that was unusual as a child. But then in the kid world, I'm prey. So like, right? You don't want to be a short, nerdy kid because you get your butts kicked, right? So I lived this kind of fake, tough, druggy partier life to get accepted by the kids. So I've always lived this dual track. Like my friends were all bad students, right? Because they're all the lower class, druggy, sad kids in school. And they're like, "Where are you going?" And I'm like, "Remedial math. I'll see you." I was headed to algebra 2. And so I would lie about what classes I was taking because I was smarter than all the other kind of druggy kids. And um, so I lived with them in ninth grade, and luckily I didn't get rearrested and get a real police record. But the next year, while I'm living with the mafia, my mom moves in with her ex-con boyfriend. So he's a former criminal, stole $10 million, which would be equivalent to $100 million in today's
Yeah.
money, from the federal government. So this guy's a criminal and corrupt in so many ways, right? He is just he's not somebody you would ever want a child around. But of course, mom doesn't know how to make good choices, so she moves in with this guy. So while I'm partying like a rock star with the mafia, she's partying like a rock star with her new boyfriend in the Hollywood Hills. And for anybody listening, the Hollywood Hills are the equivalent of Beverly Hills. So all the hills in LA are wealthy, very, very expensive homes. So I get to the next year move into this $2 million house in today's money. And again, mom can't protect a child to save her life. So she never calls to find out if there's a school bus, right?
Right.
I need to get to school. So
Yeah.
every morning I wake up and I hitchhike in Hollywood. So it is not safe for us as grown people to
Yeah.
hitchhike in Hollywood even one time. I
Right.
hitchhiked to school and back every single day for an entire school year in Hollywood. And I'm getting picked up by creeps and God knows who, right? So it's just so dangerous. And that's kind of like her quirk, is that she never knew how to protect a child.
Right.
And so my whole life was just unsafe, right? So first day of school, I meet some long-haired rock and roll kid, and and the only way I knew how to make friends back then is I would walk up to the bad kids and go, "Hey, where do I score?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, I'll hook you up." And he goes, "Where do you live?" And I go, "The Hollywood Hills." He goes, "I live in the Hollywood Hills." I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" And he goes, "I go, what do you do?" He goes, "I'm in a band." I'm like, "Yes, rock and roll. That's so cool." And I had longish hair then, and I was into Judas Priest and Iron Maiden and Van Halen and Rush. Those were my big bands back
Yeah.
then.
Yeah.
And so I get invited to the Rock and Roll Mansion. Okay, so Chris Webber is the founding guitarist of Guns N' Roses, and this I'm meeting him as a kid, right? He's not. There's no band yet.
Yeah.
He was a rock and roll prodigy, so he was an amazing guitar player all the way back, starting in elementary school. So his wealthy parents recognized his talent early on, and they bought him really expensive equipment, like beautiful guitars, and he's living in what today is a $4.5 million house. And so I take my little moped.
Mm.
So, because this is how you want to roll up on a mansion, okay? Like, cruising through the corners of Hollywood and up through the hills, right? And
Yeah.
what's really amazing, have you ever heard of Frank Zappa?
Yeah. Yeah.
So get this, I lived near Frank Zappa. So
Oh
my
wow.
trek from my house to Chris Webber's house goes
Yeah.
down Woodstock Lane. You can't make this up. And
Right.
on Woodstock Lane in the Hollywood Hills, you can look it up.
Yeah.
Frank Zappa had his studio in his home. And if I
Wow.
remember right, his studio was bought, if I remember, I could be getting this wrong, you could Google it. I think it got bought by Mick Jagger's daughter, and I think even at one point by Madonna or Lady Gaga. So it is a famous studio in the Hollywood Hills, Woodstock Lane. And so I'm cruising on my little moped past Frank Zappa on my way
Yeah.
to rock and roll history. Okay. So you can't make this up. So I end up at this gorgeous house, and picture a house covered in ivy like a castle, like a medieval castle. And it has a stained glass window right by the front door. I'm like, oh my gosh, right? So I come from the other side of the tracks, right? And so uh, I knock on the door, and this beautiful girl answers. And at this point, Chris Webber and I hadn't really discovered girls yet, or maybe they hadn't discovered us. So I'm like, who's the girl? How did this even happen? Like a girl in the house. What the heck? And so of course, she was the drummer's girlfriend.
Right.
So he was a little bit older. So I get walked down this beautiful hallway. So picture 13 French doors overlooking the valley. And so this house is on stilts over the cliff. And this is the $1 million view that all the rock stars, movie stars,
Right.
everybody pays for in
Yeah.
LA. The very top of the hill, and it's just this panoramic, right? And this house is still epic. I found it on Zillow, and the pictures are just mind blowing. So, and so I walk into this oak paneled office, like something you'd see in a movie. So all
Mm.
it's kind of like where they would have, the like an old lawyer's office where it's got
Yeah.
oak paneling and a big
Yeah.
fireplace and everything. And there's the band, right? And it's not quite Guns N' Roses yet. This is the precursor. And so I'm like, yeah, like rock and roll. I love this thing. And so we become instant best friends. And we spend an entire school year, 10th grade, getting in trouble and just almost getting arrested again. I mean, like, it's just when you live hedonistically, your life is complete chaos,
Yeah.
right? When every single temptation and stupid idea that comes your way, you're like, yes, right? That is such a recipe for disaster. And so I lived that way from 11 all the way to 22, roughly 21, 22. And so I got a crazy story from it, but thank God I barely survived it. So don't recommend that, people. Anybody listening, don't say yes to every single thing that comes your way. Practice no once in a while. And
Yeah.
so,
So the whole Guns N' Roses story is something like, so you were in the precursor of the band as a full blown global band, popular
right.
absolutely everywhere. But you
Yeah,
had some of the similar people that were involved in there. How did you sort of take a step, and how close were you to when Guns N' Roses became, at the time, biggest band in the world?
absolutely. So I was right there, like 1 second away. So that was 10th grade. So sadly, in 11th grade, we find out that we're poor again. So mom's boyfriend sells this beautiful house, moves us right back to the barrio where we came from.
Right.
In a in And so in LA, there was a famous movie with Nicolas Cage way back in the 80s called Valley Girl. And it
Okay.
was all about a Hollywood punk rocker type guy dating a girl from the valley. And his friends are like, you can't date somebody from the valley. That is the cool, uncool thing, right? And it's true. Back then, that we were so shallow that um, you, LA people didn't consort with
Right.
uncool valley people. So
Right.
I moved to the valley and lose all my friends. So
Okay.
like it's just gone, and there's no cell phones, there's nothing, right? There's no internet back then. So I just moved to the valley, and I'm like, I'll never see those folks again. And crazily, I survived till 12th grade, also hanging out with bad kids and doing stupid. But I get a phone call, and Chris Webber goes, "Hey, I'm in a band." And the band was Hollywood Rose, and it was the precursor to Guns N' Roses. So Hollywood Rose over here, LA Guns, another friend of ours, band over here, and they had a weird stepchild, and that became Guns N' Roses. So there was two bands that kind of merged, and they all traded members. So there's like a whole history timeline online that you could probably find of how that crazy band came about. So Chris Webber was the founding guitarist of a band called AXL, which Axel took as his name, and then it became Rose. So Axel Rose literally took his first band name and his second band name as his official
Yeah.
moniker, right? And so I'm picked up by my wealthy friend, and I don't have a car yet, but I had a camera. So I grabbed my camera. So I've always been a camera nerd, so you can see in the background.
Yeah.
Um, I grab my camera and I become the very first photographer ever of the band. And so we drive back to Hollywood. I grab my camera and we're driving through the streets of Hollywood, and I see a pink car, and it matches the pink leather jacket that Axl Rose is wearing. And so I'm the little kid in the back seat surrounded by giant rocker guys. And I'm like, stop the car. Right. And so we stop the car and I pose them in front of this stranger's vehicle, and I take the money shot. And little did I know that that photo would become the album cover years
Wow.
and years later.
Yeah.
And that photo has gone all over the world.
Yeah.
It's been behind the music, VH1. It's on
Yeah.
album covers, Rolling Stone. coffee table books, if you want that kind of book on your coffee table. And so the beautiful book is called Watch You Bleed, the story of Guns N' Roses. So, it's not everybody's coffee table book. All right. Okay. You got to be a little bit edgy to have that in front of grandma. But
So where
so the
did you
photo,
move on from there? So you spent time with the Guns N' Roses. What's the next stage of
sure.
your
So I graduate from high school and I get kicked out of my home. My mother looks at me, the crazy one, right, who doesn't know how to protect children. And she says, "You're an adult now, get out." And at the exact moment, divine appointment, weirdly, I get a phone call from Chris Webber going, "Dude, my parents gave me a house." So from the $4.5 million house to the $1 million cabin up near the Hollywood Bowl off Cahuenga in the Hollywood Hills. So I'm going from, this will be my second house in the hills.
right?
And so I move into the Guns N' Roses party house. And it is literally heroin addicts and prostitutes and me. And people are like, "Did you have like cool hair and piercings and tattoos?" I'm like, "No." And so I look exactly like this. So if I wasn't cool enough to hang out with the rockers before, I had cut my hair off. So I didn't have long hair anymore. And so I literally look like this. And so I move in. And now in hindsight, I'm really thankful that I didn't look like them, because I would have partook in all the evil practices that they were involved in.
Mm,
So I kind of lived an in but not of, kind of a separate
right,
life in that
right.
house, because all the girls wanted long-haired rock and roller future rock stars, right?
Yeah.
And so I became everybody's little brother, even though I was the same age as most of the girls, and I was the same age as my roommate and best friend Chris. So, but what happened there is, my tagline is, when it looks like Satan is winning, God has a plan, right?
Right.
And so I am living in pure evil. I mean, this place is dark. We even had a coffin with a dead body in it in the front room.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Right.
And what's crazy, if you Google the band 45 Grave, you can see the dead body. It
Right.
was part of a stage show, and there's a photo online of Thurston, the dead body that lived in my house.
Wow.
Again, you can't make this up. It's like Dracula's castle. We
Yeah.
had a coffin, we had a dead body in it. So just a normal day in Hollywood. But get this, I get a job at Hollywood and Vine, this famous intersection. And there's all these stories of people getting discovered at corners in LA, right? So Lana Turner, a famous actress, was discovered in a soda shop on the corner. And I am next door to the building that used to have Charlie Chaplin and John Wayne and the Academy. Literally, the Oscars was in this building. So I'm in this little store next to this famous building that used to house all the movie stars. It was the first high-rise building in LA,
Mm,
literally. And so it's this historical building built in 1927. So I'm in this little store, and a vice president walks into my store and he mentions Cal State Northridge Career Center, divine appointment, right? When God shows up and everything changes. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I got this job at the Cal State Northridge Career Center. What were you doing there?" And this guy's name was Rob Langer, and he was 27. And I don't know anything about him. I didn't ask what he did. And he says, "I was placing an ad for a runner." And I go, "Do you want to use the phone?" He goes, "Why?" I go, "To cancel the ad, you just found your runner." And so literally, this 27-year-old superstar who's made a million good choices in his life looks at a 20-year-old idiot who has made a zillion bad choices in his life, and he goes, "You're hired." And literally, he bought me a suit and tie. He gave me the equivalent of a six-figure job and a secretary and office in my own 12-story building, which was the building, the Taft building, where Charlie Chaplin was in the building.
Goodness.
So I get this historical building to lease up as a commercial realtor. And across the street is the old Broadway department store building, also historical. Sorry, I'm going to get a drink real quick. And so So there's two buildings and there's two guys. So normally I wouldn't get my own building. I was a runner. I was a you know, the lowest level person in commercial real estate. But
Mm.
because there was two buildings, I got my own building
Right.
by God's grace, right? And we took on the world and we were very, very successful, Rob and I. Two 20 something year olds
Yeah.
against Hollywood.
Yeah.
And Capitol Records, if you're familiar with Hollywood pictures, there's a famous Capitol Records building that the Beatles were signed by. And it's this round tower that looks like a stack of records. That was literally across the street from our buildings. And Rob and I closed a deal with the legal department for Capitol. So two 20 something year olds against a whole two floors of
Mm.
50 and 60-year-old Hollywood attorneys.
Mm.
And we
Mm.
won. And we closed this massive, what would be in today's money, multi million dollar deal. And we built this gorgeous facility for them. So it was really amazing time. And we ended up having a total of, I think, 5 buildings in LA, all towers, all in
All towers,
historic.
and they were all rented out to different businesses and
Correct. And then the customers were all colorful Hollywood wackies. You know what I mean? Like
mm.
it's recording studios and ad agencies and acting schools and every kind of Hollywood weirdo that would want to be in those buildings, we rented to them. We even had a cult in one of the buildings. Yeah, welcome to Hollywood. and like, and so you'd go up in the elevator and you're like, so where are you guys from? And you're like, oh, okay, the cult on floor 2. Okay. You know,
How long were you in that world for? Like, where were you living at this stage? You obviously had a
I
pretty
was living
decent
I was
job
still
as
living
well.
with the band, which is so
Right.
crazy. I'm living with so if I wasn't cool before, can you imagine now I'm in a suit and tie
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I'm showing up at the Rock and Roll House. And so, you know, there's only two kinds of people: those that have been humbled and those that are about to be,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And so but I'm still a partier. I'm still living this double life. And crazily, I end up escaping from the Guns N' Roses people and moving to another city because they all became drug addicts. And luckily, a friend saw my plight and rescued me and let me sleep on his couch for a bit. Then we ended up getting an apartment together. And so, right around that time, my career is starting to crash because I'm living this double life, right? Like I'm not this respectable employee that they think I am,
Yeah.
right? So I'm just working and getting enough money to have another crazy weekend
Yeah.
or crazy Tuesday. And so there was no weekends. It was every day was a weekend. And so um, I'm finally in a movie theater in Burbank, California. And so that's another Hollywood, that's where all the studios are as well. And Disney is in Burbank and NBC. And so a lot of big Hollywood studios and uh, facilities are there. So I'm in Hollywood or in Burbank, and I'm going to a movie theater with my druggy friends. And the movie is a version of Freaky Friday. Have you heard of that? Freaky Friday,
Yeah.
where the mom and daughter
Yeah.
switch. Well,
Yeah.
this is called Like Father, Like Son, and it was Dudley Moore. Do you remember Dudley Moore, the British
Yeah. Of
comedian?
course. Yeah.
Dudley Moore and Kirk Cameron. And Kirk Cameron was the star of the month, right? He was a teen heartthrob.
Yeah.
And they switch. So here's the crazy part. So I call him another divine appointment. So Dean Moore, short, funny guy in a suit, is watching Dudley Moore on the screen. Short, funny guy in a suit, where on the outside he's a surgeon, but on the inside he's a 16-year-old idiot.
Yeah.
And in that movie theater, Burbank, California, in 1987, God spoke to me and said, "That's you. I gave you a miracle birth, a miracle family, the Clarks, and now a miracle career. And what the heck are you doing?" you know, you've taken everything, all these blessings and miracles, and you've drove them into the dirt, right? And you've dishonored the God that provided this incredible life for you. And I just immediately knew I always believed in God and Satan, right? And I didn't believe in God enough to obey him,
Mm.
but I believed in Satan. I lived with Satan, right? I had seen darkness at the deepest level. So I knew if there was a hell, I was going there, right? On a bullet train.
Yeah.
so so finally God spoke to me in this movie theater. I go home to my apartment in Burbank and I tell all my druggie friends that I'm going clean. And druggie friends hate that, right? You're a buzzkill, right?
Yeah.
That is not a popular thing to announce at a party, right? Like, hey, everybody, I'm going to get sober and I'm going to make you all feel horrible about yourself,
Yeah.
right? So immediately I'm on the outs with my friends, and my roommate moves out. And what's interesting, he's still my dear friend today. He's doing great. So this roommate, I don't want to trash him if he's listening to this ever. I love this guy and he's doing amazingly. In fact, all of my friends, including the rock and roll guitarist, he became a licensed child therapy and drug rehab specialist. Got his master's degree and married and kids. So the rock and roller, the former rock star, he's doing fantastic today.
Mm.
And so we all kind of survived. Even the mafia kid is now my business partner, and
Nice.
he has a brokerage, insurance brokerage. So I'm at one of his agents. So he's amazing. So it is interesting how God had a plan, not just for me, but for a lot of these guys.
Yeah.
And so I one roommate moves out, and I get a call from Brooks, my mafia buddy. He's the kid that lived in the mafia house,
Yeah.
and he moves in. So I'm not making good choices. I wanted to get rid of my drug connection, but I invited yet another drug connection into the house. So still not quite thinking clearly, but God had a plan. And that guy introducing me to a Jewish girl, weird, his ex-girlfriend, who dragged me to a Christian church. And in a room of 3,000 people. And what I tell people is that we all have a God shaped hole in our life. And you could take all the sex, drugs, rock and roll, beauty, fame, trophy wife, husband, and throw it into a God shaped hole, and it won't even leave a dent
Mm.
because that hole is made for God and God alone. You can't fill a God shaped hole without God.
Yeah.
And so I believe by inviting Christ into your life and asking for forgiveness, you fill that hole, and what was a cavern becomes a platform that you could build a life on. And it's not an easy life, right? It's not like, sign here and it's a genie in the bottle and you get everything you want. But I really believe it's the only life that you should live, right? Because
Did
if
you
you were
get clean
created,
after that?
correct. I got clean before that. Like I got a clear head for a minute. And then 9 months later, God stepped in, and I don't even know if I had a clear enough head to have made any kind of decision for God before that.
Right.
Right? It's like he needed I needed some cleaning, you know, some
Yeah.
drying out period. And amazingly, I end up and here's where Guns N' Roses steps in. So when I got signed for commercial real estate, it was 1986 when Guns N' Roses got signed. And if you go to my portfolio at foundstudios.com, you'll see the contract
Yeah.
that Guns N' Roses signed, right? Like it's in my portfolio.
Yeah.
And so they get signed in 86. I get signed in 86. In 1988, and the very month and year that God took over my life, they became number one in the world. Sweet Child of Mine, their big hit song.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
I tell people they became number one, but I met number one, the real number one. And so God had a plan for me. And for some reason, Guns N' Roses still factors into my story today. Like, why the heck am I still telling this story? It's weird. But for some reason, the photos came out of the woodwork, were rediscovered 20 years later, and
Right.
then became the album cover just less than 10 years ago.
Right.
So for
Amazing.
some reason, the photo still is the gift that keeps on giving and keeps opening doors for me even to this day. And so anyway, so I end up in working with children, working with high school kids, and eventually met my wife a couple years later in 90. And we served in ministry together, working with younger kids. And then we had our own kids. And now those kids are 29 and 32. So not kids. So I've grown adults, amazing guys that I've been privileged to help raise, and so
What
I'm
what what
still
would you have said to them if they'd made some questionable decisions with all of your like? Because they're like, how do you criticize? How do you tell a child off if they're like they may not have made those decisions, but how do you think you would have made decided
yeah.
on how you would dealt with
Well,
that?
I'm I'm glad you asked. So there's this line that I heard, and I don't know if, and there's some people that are listening to this that don't even believe in sin, right? Like they don't believe there's, like they just believe in this kind of neutral world where, hey, everything's right in your own eyes, right? I don't believe that, obviously, but sin is actually an archery term. It just means missing the mark. So it's an easy way for you to think about it. If you were created to be this incredible violinist, right? And you've squandered that talent, right? You know that you have the gift, and you just decide, I'm just not going to do it, right? I'm
Mm,
missing the mark.
mm,
So there's things that all of us were called to do, discipline wise, marital wise, decision wise, work wise. And for us to not do it is missing the mark,
mm,
right? Well, morally, right, I believe we're called to a higher standard, right? If we're married, we want to be faithful in our marriage, right? If we're parents, we want to be faithful to our kids and live an upright life before them and make good choices so that they have a path to follow, right? So there's so many things where we're called to this higher standard. So that's sin, right? And there's a line that somebody gave me early on. It says, sin takes you farther than you want to go, keeps you there longer than you want to stay, and costs you more than you want to pay.
right,
Takes you farther, keeps you longer, and costs you more. And think about me when I'm sneaking cigarettes behind the garage. Who would have ever imagined I would live with heroin addicts and seeing distressed girls with needles in their arms in my kitchen? Literally, it's like seeing all my friends, every single
yeah,
person I knew, become a heroin junkie.
yeah,
And some of them not really come out of it okay, right? Like it's permanent damage. Some of them almost died. It's amazing that they all, I don't know if you can do the research. Almost every Guns N' Roses member, including my best friend Chris, they all have permanent medical issues,
sure,
defibrillators, metal heart valves, strokes, you know, like,
yeah,
and so I'm just looking at how does God take care of his kids versus Satan,
yeah,
right? And do you remember that? I don't know if you ever saw that Got Milk commercial. I don't know if they had those in England, but it was like this guy, he's like thinks he's in heaven. And he opens up the fridge or no, there's cookies, right? And he eats this giant cookie and then he opens up the fridge and it's full of milk. And he goes, "Heaven." And then he opens up and every single thing of milk is empty. And he's like, "Oh, it's not heaven, it's hell." And so there's always a gotcha, right?
yeah,
Like anything the world provides you that God doesn't have any part of, there's usually a trick, right? You get the girl, you finally, have this great relationship or whatever, sexual fling or whatever, and you're like, yeah, got the girl. And then you're like, oh, wait a minute, right? Little like you didn't read the fine print,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
It's like that contract. It's like the age old thing, right? The crossroads with right? Where you make a deal with the devil at the crossroads, and he's like,
yeah,
"Oh, you didn't write, or you read the fine print." And I can really see that in the Guns N' Roses guys' life.
yeah,
It's really just one tragedy after another. Not that I've had an easy life, but I've been on God's team for 37 years, and I've been sober for 37 years. So even though I've gone through a lot, I can always see that even in the valley, God is walking me with me through that, not helicoptering me over it,
mm,
right?
mm,
So I still have to go through the trial. I still have to go
sure.
through the valley,
So,
but
so what does life look for you now, Dean?
sure.
37 years.
So
Like, what are you doing in your day? What the business that
yeah,
you're running?
thank you for asking. So um, after commercial real estate, I got into graphic arts. And what that means is if you've ever gone into like the local print shop and they have those gigantic copier printers that do color and do beautiful
Mm.
posters and things. I got in that printing industry back in the early 90s when computers were just becoming popular in everybody's home. So there was a point at which nobody had a computer. I don't know if you remember that time period, but literally it was like only the super nerds had a computer, but
Yeah.
regular people just didn't have a computer,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And there was no such thing really as graphics on a computer.
Mm.
That wasn't mainstream. That was an expensive piece
Yeah.
of software that you had to buy. So I started selling this very expensive equipment. And I was located right in the perfect part of LA, excuse me, where all the celebrities, ad agencies, and movie studios bought their stuff. So once I figured that out, and my machine was so expensive, the equivalent of a car in today's money, right? And then the ink alone was $2,000. Ink. Like we think, like the $100 cartridges that we buy for a little
Yeah.
inkjet is expensive.
Yeah.
Try 2 grand. And
Jeez.
that's in 30-year ago money.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that would be what, $10,000 in today's money? The whole
Yeah.
thing was crazy. And so the only people that said yes to that was LA's elite, either the biggest ad agency, the biggest movie studio, or celebrities. And so immediately, are you familiar with Marlon Brando?
Of course. Yeah.
He was my first client.
Wow.
And he even hired me as one of his graphics persons. So Marlon Brando, OJ Simpson during the murder, that same machine I was selling to OJ Simpson. And then that machine led to Titanic. A similar machine led to Elvis Presley Enterprises, Hearst, the Hearst Castle, William Randolph Hearst. The Hearst family bought one. So it was such an expensive machine. It was like selling Lamborghinis in Beverly Hills.
Yeah.
There's nobody normal buying a
Yeah.
Lamborghini in Beverly Hills. So everybody's got a story. It's either their money because they're a celebrity or daddy's money because he's a sheik or whatever, right? So it's just not normal. And so I was selling this equipment, and once I figured that out, I was like, ooh, right? This is a divine appointment engine where this could change my life. So I start teaching myself to be a graphic designer. And so for 2 years, I put myself through graphic design boot camp. And 2 years in, exactly, I get both my first corporate client and Marlon Brando at the same time.
Wow.
And God used Marlon Brando to get me the other client because they're like, so Dean, I like your work. Have you worked with anybody that we would know? And I go, well, last night I was with Marlon Brando. And they're like, what? And I tell this crazy story, and it is the nuttiest story. I won't take up this time, but email me. You won't believe the
Okay.
story. So Marlon Brando helped me land my first real account. Yeah, it was very strange. And so I did that business for 20 something years
Right.
while running a design studio in parallel. So suit and tie executive by day, graphic design crazy person by night. And eventually my clients became the movie Titanic. So a buddy of mine uh, owned the studio.
Which was the
And
biggest film in the world at the time, wasn't it? By a
right,
long way, Titanic in the
it was.
97, 98, something like that.
Yeah, it was 97. And then it won 11 Oscars. And I
Yeah.
did that Oscar campaign. So I did the launch of the movie and the Oscar campaign. And do you
Yeah.
remember the movie Fifth Element?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
wasn't
With
my favorite movie,
French
but
director. What was his
yeah,
name?
what a weird guy. Luc Besson.
Luc
What a
Besson. That's it.
strange, he is one strange bird. If you see
Yeah.
any of his movies, they're all just off,
Yeah.
right? Like there's what?
Yeah.
Like the French are not like us, like what the heck is going? And so sorry if anybody's French listening. But anyway, but Luc Besson is a definitely weird character. Google it. And that movie is just a little twisted, right? And it was Bruce Willis, I think, if I
Yeah.
remember right.
Yeah. It was. It was.
And sadly, Bruce Willis is not doing great right now.
No.
His documentary, if you haven't seen it on Netflix, is really sweet.
Okay.
I
Okay.
was I was really touched by it. what a wonderful family he has, that's
Yeah,
taking
yeah,
care
he
of
does. Yeah.
him. And so for some reason, I get thrust into Hollywood. My best friend owns a movie studio that did motion capture for Titanic, and not just Titanic, but every A-list property for like 10 years. Like the list is unbelievable. And so, it's all who you know, right? And one of the things I tell people, one of the philosophies I teach is if you prepare for the world, I believe God will send the world to you. So, say you want to be a social influencer, a singer, a guitar player, or an artist, or whatever, prepare yourself for the world, right? You don't just half-ass the
Yeah,
process and expect that God's going to send the world to you. Like
yeah.
like on like American Idol, or those shows where they just bring in the amateurs and then they make fun of
Mm-mm.
them, like Simon Cowell, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And he's like, "No, you really shouldn't be singing." Like, it just go away, you
yeah,
peasant, right? They haven't prepared for the world. They don't have a friend in the world that could go, "Really, you're not ready for American Idol.
yeah,
You're going to
yeah.
embarrass yourself in front of the globe. So stop." And so I prepared myself to be a designer at a high level. I really, really worked hard at it. And when my time came, I still wasn't ready, but I spent hundreds of hours perfecting these Titanic ads, and they changed my life.
Mm,
So, one of the philosophies I say is when God puts you in a room that you don't belong in, that you're not prepared for, you're not educated for, you need to leave blood on the keyboard, right? You need to do something special that squeezes every ounce of that opportunity out of that. And so, like, for instance, if you finally get that interview, right?
mm, mm.
And prepare, right? Like,
Yeah,
if you're an artist, if you're a singer, if you're a guitar player, practice more than you've ever practiced in your life. And luckily, when I got the Titanic ad, I went nuts. I just thought, what can I do that nobody else would be crazy enough to do? And I actually created a movie poster, 3 feet by 4 feet, for the head of marketing for James Cameron. And I put my artwork on it and I said, "Thanks for the astounding images. Remember me." And I made my logo the same size as their logo.
right.
I rolled it up and I handed it to a guard at the movie studio gate. And
Yeah,
I go, "Can you deliver this to Bob?" And he walks it into Bob, and Bob calls me up instantly and says, "Nobody has done this before. Nobody has made me a movie poster. You're hired." And so, just like, me in the luggage store telling that guy, "Hey, hire me, I'm your runner."
yeah,
And I'm not bragging, it's just when an opportunity presents itself, go for it,
yeah.
right? Put yourself out there, no fear, right?
And
And
you
to
still have
trust
the
that God is
studio,
going to
don't you? You still have the studio that you're running.
correct. So I have both Found Studios and Found CMO, which stands for Chief Marketing Officer. So the newest one is foundcmo.com. And then lately we've found financepros.com and found lead gen, in which we find leads for people. So I have
Yeah,
four different found divisions, so to speak. And you can see my artwork for Titanic and Major League Baseball and um, automotive clients, aerospace clients. And so I've been very blessed to be able to work on high level projects. And I call it the privilege of being a part of the process. I know that I'm not the reason, right? I'm not Guns N' Roses. I'm not Titanic. So, but for some reason, if you work on your craft and you're a dedicated professional, God will allow you to the privilege of being a part of the process, like a
yeah.
front row seat into history, right? And maybe you're that star, right? Maybe you are the person that's going to create the next Titanic or Guns N' Roses. I was always not the super creator of the actual work, but for some reason I got to be in the inner circle.
And
And
so what does the plan look for the next 2 to 5 years, like going forward from where you are now?
sure, one of the things I'm working on right now is I'm the representative of one of the most famous architects in the world. And his name is Joseph McDonald. You can Google him, Harvard professor. owned an he builds cities of the futures and data centers all over the world. So what my job is to try to connect him up with the people that would hire him, investors, developers, contractors, and even cities, right? Where, hey, we want to bring this facility. And are you familiar with data centers and what that all
Yep.
entails?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. And so Meta, Nvidia, right? And Google, they are looking for these gigantic factories filled with servers that they can power AI.
Yep.
And I don't know if you've heard this before. This is crazy. If you do a normal Google search and you say, "What is the name of the first, American president?" It takes 1 kilowatt of power.
Right.
If you go to AI and you say, "Who is the first president of the America?" It takes 10 kilowatts of power.
Okay.
Same search.
Yeah.
And verify that. I heard this, somebody speaking, but I haven't done the research of that, but there's literal power
Yeah.
considerations to using AI, which makes sense, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
tapping into the collective brain of the whole planet that it stole. Right.
Yeah.
So Google AI has just literally stole all the collective brilliance of the world, and that it's just spitting it out for free. Well, somebody's going to pay, right? And people are paying in their jobs, right? Like I've lost multiple six figures from AI already. Clients that used to pay me real money to do real artwork for them don't call me anymore.
Right.
So I'm pivoting, right? So you ask me what does the next 5, 10 years look like? Oh my gosh, who knows, right? But one of my philosophies is I can't beat AI, but I can beat that guy over there using AI.
Yeah.
He's going to use AI. I'm going to use AI, but I'm a real artist. He's not.
Yeah.
So we call it AI slop. AI slop is the normal garbage that everybody gets from AI.
Yeah.
So it takes a real artist, a real writer, a real curator of talent to sort through all the garbage that AI pushes out
Yeah.
and know what's good, what's going to launch that business, what's going to launch that, what song lyric they can integrate into their song, whatever.
Yeah.
If you just let the robot do everything, yeah, you're no better than a monkey, right? Like
Yeah.
we need talent still, right? The world's gonna, I think it's gonna be a blowback, right? Where people like CGI, right?
Mm.
And cartoons.
Mm.
I think
Mm.
Disney
Mm.
is even starting their hand drawn division again.
Are they
Like
really?
there's a swing, right? Like everybody
Yeah.
goes all into futuristic, modern
Yeah.
stuff,
Then they
and
go
then
retro.
yeah, and then we just go, ugh, there's no heart, there's no soul
Mm.
in
Mm.
the robot output.
So
And I
so
use
after so Dean, after your story or lots of twists and turns, and what would you say that you've learned from your life up to now? What are the key fundamental things that you've learned? Obviously, God has been an important aspect of that, but
absolutely.
what else have you learned beyond?
Sure. Well, yeah, the God thing is huge for me, obviously, and capitalizing on opportunities, right? Showing up, being consistent, right? People are so tired of flaky people, and I struggle in that as well. But being present, right? Being taking advantage of opportunities that come your way, consistency, working hard, obviously, and delivering on your promises, right? That's the key. And so those would be the main hallmarks of what I'm trying to live. Like, not that I've
Yeah,
achieved it, but trying to be consistent. And 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 then one of the things that I do is I'm the conductor of the orchestra. I'm always recruiting brilliance in every aspect, every section of the orchestra. So, like you have first chair, second chair, third chair in violins, third chair, second chair, third
yeah,
chair, and right in another section. I'm looking for talent in all the aspects that solve business problems. So the piece of music I'm conducting is whatever solves your business problem.
yeah,
And so I want to have all these experts that I can tap so that we can collectively win the larger engagement.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things that I'm doing right now is recruiting talent, nurturing talent. And since I have a vast network of clients, potential clients, that's what I'm looking for. And that's what I
Brilliant.
do on a daily basis.
Look, Dean, thank you so much for you telling your story today. It's been a bit of a different show with the story that you had to tell, but it's been absolutely fascinating. What an interesting guy that you are. And if this reminds you of that business growth doesn't have to always start in the boardroom. Sometimes it will come from a decision, a little bit of chaos, and in Dean's case, a lot of guts as well. So if you've enjoyed this episode of Business Growth Talks, make sure that you follow and subscribe wherever you're listening or watching. And if Dean's story resonates with you, share it with someone who you think would find benefit from this story. My name's Mark Hayward. This is Business Growth Talks. And until the next time, I look forward to speaking to you about growth. Thank you, Dean. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. And feel free to reach out to me, anybody that's watching.
Brilliant. Thanks.